Welcome to this episode of First Time Hustle. I'm Kim McCarty.
And I'm Dave Stahl. This week, we're going to talk about a recent ruling that came out against the National Association of Realtors.
Yes.
Give me your take on what happened, what it was.
So most real estate agents knew that this was coming. We knew there was going to be a ruling. We knew about the lawsuit. We knew everything that was coming. We didn't know exactly how it was going to play out, of course. So it's a ruling. It has not been put into place yet. I'm sure that there will be some more movement in this ruling, and what is officially put out there is supposed to go into effect in July. That's what we're being told. My thoughts on it. So basically,
what was the ruling first? What did they rule?
Basically, the ruling is stating that we can no longer, as real estate agents, advertise what the buyer's agent's commission is going to be in our multiple listing service. Okay. So right now it is a report that you can print out, and it says BAC, buyer agent commission. And there's always a number there. So if it's 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever the percent is, it's listed there. So everyone can see it. That is being paid for by the selling agent, her or his brokerage. Okay, so a lot of confusion on that. It's actually a listing agreement that is taken between the seller and the broker of the agent that is representing the seller. In there, it says what the seller's agent is willing to pay the cooperating broker. And that is where we put that on the MLS or the multiple listing service that spells out what that's going to be. So now they don't want that advertised. So they don't want the public, I guess, to see the buyer agent commission and what that is going to be. So what does that mean for real estate agents? Well, for real estate agents, we'll figure out how we're going to get around this by probably either having a broker-to-broker agreement, which we already have. We use it on every lease that we do. So now they'll probably have some sort of form that is similar to that maybe will get put into our document section, which is in a public place. It would be a private section for just the realtors to then look and see what that commission rate is going to be paid for through the selling agent's broker. I want to make sure that we're really clear on that the selling agent's broker is paying the cooperative broker. Let's say that you go on a listing appointment and you take a listing for 6%. That 6% is actually due to the seller's agent's broker. But the seller's agent broker states in there what they're willing to participate with another broker for. So
hold on, let's be clear. So what you're saying is that the seller's agent's broker is setting up an agreement with whatever buyer's agent's broker that comes in that helps them to sell the property.
Yes.
And that's in the listing agreement already.
Correct.
So how did we get to a spot where we
are today?
That we can't tell the buyer's agent's broker
what we're willing to participate
what they're willing to pay you for marketing and selling the property for? How did that happen?
It happened because a couple sellers sued saying that they were forced to pay the buyer's agent's commission. So I guess that they said that they didn't have the option. They were not given the option on what they could pay the buyer's agent's commission. Now, when I go on a listing appointment, the very first thing I say to them when we get to that section is, this is the percentage that my broker is going to be paid. On the next page, we're going to talk about what we're willing to share with the buyer broker. We get to that page, and that page, maybe it says 3%, right? This is what we're willing to pay the buyer broker off of the total 6%. We don't have to pay the buyer broker that amount, Mr. Seller. If you would like to offer something different, we can. And let me just explain what might happen if we choose to not offer a full 3%, which is standard for our industry. We may lose marketability of the home. I don't know, but we may. Because what's going to happen is a buyer's agent may see that, oh, we're only getting paid 2%. Maybe I don't want to show that house, or I have an agreement with my buyer, and my buyer agreement says they're going to pay 3%. So now my buyer is on the hook for the additional 1% shortage. So that is where the conversation really should have been happening right from the get-go. I don't know what happened. Obviously, the sellers are claiming it did not happen that way.
Right.
But I think it is a training issue that should be happening with agents. Just like a buyer's agent should never not have a buyer rep agreement with a buyer. Mine says clearly 3% commission.
So what they're now saying is that open-ended, it's a negotiation from the start.
It's always been a negotiation, really, if you think about it from the start. It's just offered at 3%. But let's just say that you're getting into multiple offers, right? Which we've seen a lot in our industry. I have received offers from agents where they actually change their commission willingly to less than 3% to bubble their offer to the top to net the seller more money. So it's been a negotiable item for a very long time.
But if the listing agent's broker has already agreed to 6%,
right,
then that buyer's agent reducing their commission really isn't benefiting anyone if you stick to the letter of the law of that listing agreement that the listing broker is getting 6% anyway.
Right. But what we do is we, in that agreement, say what we're going to split it. And then if they come back and they reduce it, then that seller technically could keep whatever they're not willing to be paid on. Okay. So there it is in a basic nutshell. But the other thing in the ruling, which I think is really important, is they are now required as buyer's agents to have a buyer rep agreement with said buyers.
Weren't they supposed to do that anyway?
Wasn't law. It was. Now, in your different offices that you are in, our office requires it as part of your paperwork in order to get paid. It is required.
Okay.
But not every broker. And of course, across the U.S., this is a U.S. ruling because it's the National Association of Realtors. So this is not just a local, state-to-state issue. This is a national issue. So now we are required to have a buyer rep agreement. I've always had one. And if you're not willing to come sit down with me for 30 minutes and make sure that we're a good fit with each other, then I probably don't want to work with you. And so that's always been kind of my philosophy behind it.
So my take on what I'm hearing about this whole thing is the biggest takeaway for me is no longer on MLS does anybody have any idea what the seller is willing to pay in terms of commissions to the buyer's agent.
Correct.
So now we could be taking buyers out to properties after you've already got a representation agreement at 3% that they figure out after they've gone to see a property that, boy, I want to buy it, but now I'm going to be responsible for 3% to my buyer's agent.
Right.
And my seller doesn't want to pay it. And really, as a result of now marketing,
I don't have the money to pay.
I'm blindsided by it.
Right. So that's where having to call the agent ahead of time and finding out what is your commission that you're participating with, the brokers. But I think that's where we're going to see some sort of document that gets put into our area that not public can see so that we know before we go show it, this is what's being offered. So, and there's also a place in the contract where we write that commission in as well. But I don't know. I think a lot of agents are very concerned about it. I don't have that alarmist feel in my gut. I could be 100% wrong about this. I've seen some agents say buyer's agents are gone, their history. No, it's going to take 1, 2, 3 lawsuits of buyers coming back and saying, I had to go unrepresented because the seller wasn't offering a commission to my agent and I went underrepresented and the seller didn't disclose this, they didn't do this, they didn't do this, and I had to use their inspector in order to get the deal done.
Yeah.
It's just going to take a couple of those lawsuits. Look at this. It only took, 2 lawsuits for sellers to claim this, to change the whole industry?
Well, and let's be clear on one thing. From what I've read, it appears to me that the only people who benefited from the suit is actually the attorneys that brought it.
Okay. And that's interesting because if you think about this, this is going to create more lawsuits. Who's going to benefit then?
The attorney.
The attorneys.
Yep. So from my perspective, the questions that have been asked of me are, what are lenders going to do to help?
Right.
And if you pay attention to where interest rates are at all,
Right.
the only way the lenders are helping is to charge you a higher rate to be able to give you a credit for that rate.
Right.
So at the end of the day, if you've signed an agreement with your agent that's 3% and the seller's not willing to participate, it means that potentially first-time home buyer has to figure out where another 3% comes from.
Right.
Maybe the lender can give them 2.
Right.
But they're still going to have to come up with another 1.
Right.
And as a result of getting the 2 from the lender, instead of getting the market rate, they're getting a rate that's probably a 1 to 1.5% higher to be able to get that credit to be able to close.
Right.
So, in my estimation, it's not a benefit to a first-time home buyer at all.
Well, and I think that's the industry or the sector of the buyer pool that I'm most concerned about. And we have a lot of young people in our lives, right, that are, let's say 5-10 years out from being ready to buy their first home. And I worry that, and I even talked to one of our young people today that just said, would you go out and buy a house unrepresented? And he said, not now, knowing what I know by sitting here listening to all that you do, but I know my generation thinks they know a lot more than they do by being able to click on the internet and searching things and doing things. There's so much more that goes into what we do representing buyers when they're buying, especially their first home, that they're not aware of. And I've got someone that I'm working with now. I think they've purchased 10 homes, let's just say. They're very educated buyers. But what I've educated them on, he told us today, he's like, no one has ever told me these things when we are purchasing a home. And you've educated me more than anyone's ever educated me. Again, I'm not here to open doors. I am here to actually educate you on your real estate and make sure that you're making a wise investment. That is the value I bring to the table. I don't need to open a door for you. I can hire somebody to open a door for you.
Right.
It's the other things that go into that. So I do worry about those first-time home buyers being in a situation where they cannot compete with people who can afford to pay if the seller's agent isn't paying. But I think it's all going to shake itself out. I really do.
And that's what I've told a few agents who have called me. I was like, the big real estate companies, the Keller Williams, the Ebby Hollidays, the Remax,
yeah,
they have attorneys who are sharp enough to figure this out in 2 months.
Yes.
And that's where we're
in March. So yeah.
But
we
almost
got
3.
Yeah, we got plenty of time.
So in 3 months' time, I'm pretty certain that they could figure out how to make it so that people know what that buyer's agent's going to get.
Yes.
So that people aren't blindsided. And that's I think that there's a lot of commotion about it, but I think that the people who are in control of that are smart enough to figure it out.
Well, and I think it's important because I think the public is hearing what the media is putting out there. And the media is putting stuff out there about, sellers, wait to sell your house because you're going to be able to sell it for a lot less because you're not going to have to pay the buyer's commission. Well, okay, let's talk about that. I mean, if honestly you think by offering 0 in a buyer's agent's commission is going to net you more money, no.
Well, if that's really how you feel, put the for sale by owner sign out in your front yard,
right,
and sell the house for 24% less than market because that's about what the average says you're going to get.
Exactly, because you're not going to get the marketability. I mean, that is the thing. You're not going to get the number of people that can see that house.
Right.
So an agent, not only do we bring you more buyers, but we also bring you qualified buyers.
Right.
Let's talk about that. Now, how many times as a seller have you gotten to almost the 11th hour and then you find out, said buyer doesn't qualify? Okay. Well, that isn't going to happen with an agent who is very good at their job and has a lender who is very good at their job. But if you let this willy-nilly stuff happen, then we're going to have houses that just don't sell because they never made it to closing. And I also want to point out, as the inventory grows, as more houses come on the market, because we know we're in a shortage right now, but that won't stay like that forever. And as more inventory grows, what's going to happen? I have even said, hey, those buyer's agents, they may be getting 4%. They may be getting more than their average 3% because now we want to entice them to bring their buyers. It's no different than what the builders do. Think about those builders. They are enticing buyer's agents all day, every day. We're going to offer you 4% commission, 5% commission, 6% commission, and we're going to give your buyer $10,000 in closing costs, and we're going to buy down their rate to 4.99%. Like, come on. They're enticing buyer's agents. See me, come see us.
Right.
As soon as that inventory increases, what do you think is going to happen? So I'm not worried about it. I will continue to educate my sellers about it. I will continue to educate my buyers about it. I think there will be some changes in our particular buyer rep agreement for our group and how we structure that. I haven't figured out how I'm going to structure that, but I am going to be listening to our broker tomorrow speak on this and kind of what he's hearing from the powers that be on what they're planning. And then once I have their plan, then as things start to shake out, that is probably going to adjust how we react to this. But I would tell most people right now, this is not something that I would change my plan when it comes to selling or buying real estate right now. I would not even let this cloud what my plans are.
Awesome.
Yeah. Any other questions you can think of?
No, I think we've nailed it. And I think in between now and July, really,
it could all change.
Well, it could all change, but I think that for first-time home buyers, that, like you said, you need to be educated by a good agent.
Right.
You need to have a good loan officer who can help you navigate the waters.
Right.
And as we get to July and figure out what exactly is going to happen, you still need to be plugged in. You can't go flying alone because you're just not going to get to the finish line.
You're not going to get to the finish line. You're never going to win if there's a multiple offer situation unrepresented. I mean, because if you go unrepresented, that seller's agent works for this seller, not for you.
Right.
So, awesome. All right.
If they need to get a hold of you, how do they do it?
214-662-9308. And how about you?
And to get me, it's 972-896-8790.
Awesome.